Okay, welcome back everyone to our Motzei Shabbos Marathon. 30 people strong and 2 people here in the Aguda and Sandy Grunfeld on Facebook and all those that are watching us on TorahAnytime.com and Kololoshin. Welcome everybody and a good tavach as we continue learning before Shavuos to be Mekayim the Mitzvah V'dibar Tabam Lasis Nachas Ruach Liyotzreinu on this 40th night of the Omer where we put our actual practice to what our mouths say, that we actually pine to learn Torah, and even though it's late in the night already, we're starting yet a second blot, so bravo to all of you. You're all wonderful. Now, here's an interesting thing.
Rabbi, can I give you a name for Aliyah's Neshama, please?
Yes.
Yehudis Bas Nachum.
We learn Lila Nishmas Yehudis Bas Nachum that her neshama should have an aliyah. She should be a Melitzas Yashara for her family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael.
Can I get one too?
Yes.
Rikkel Bas Ruven HaKohen.
Rikkel Bas Ruven HaKohen. Neshama should have an aliyah. She should be a Melitzas Yashara for her family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. So let's say Marshall is a Shemechina. Marshall is normally, if something happens, he's off the hook, but he has to swear. But I ask Marshall, do me a favor, watch my car. He says, I'll do it, but on the condition that I don't have to swear. Something happens, you'll trust me. It's a very reasonable request. Or let's say I want to borrow Marshall's convertible. So when I borrow Marshall's convertible, I'm chayiv in einzin. Normally, I'm chayiv in einzin. But let's say v'ashoyel liyos potem l'shalom. I say, look, if there's an einus, if it's stolen, if it's lost, I don't want to pay. So the Mishnah says I could stipulate that. Nois is soicher, paid watchman and a renter liyos pturin. They could stipulate to be poter mishvua. Let's say it was an einus, and he would have to swear. He says, I don't want to swear. Or milishalom, or if it's stolen or lost, I don't want to pay. Then the Mishnah seems to say just the opposite. That kol hamasna hamasha kasav b'Torah to know about it. If you stipulate against what it says in the Torah, your stipulation is null and void. As the Gemara will say, a husband has to give his wife food, clothing, and marital intimacy. If he is mekadosh on the condition that he shouldn't have to give these things, so we disregard the Tanai. The Tanai is batal. He can't stipulate against the Torah. Now, we learn out from the Torah that the Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Shevet Menashe wanted to have the land of Sichon and Og on the Transjordan. So they stipulated that if we go across and do battle with our brethren, then we'll get the land. If we don't go across, then we won't get the land. So we learn out from there that we need T'nai Kodim L'maisa, the condition before the action. So therefore the Mishnah says, the kol T'nai sheyesh ma'isa b'tchilasai T'nai batal. If you put the action before the condition, that's no good, because that's not like the T'nai b'nei Gad and b'nei Reuven and Chatzi Shevet Menashe. They put the condition first. And finally, the kol she'ev shaloi l'kaima b'seifai, if the condition is possible to be upheld, v'hisni mai b'tchilasai, and he did the T'nai first, as you're supposed to, then T'nai kain. But if the condition can never be upheld, he says, here's your get, on the condition that you could go up to and sit on the sun. So on the condition, please let me finish. If he says, here's your get, on the condition that you go up and sit on the sun, so the din is it's a good get, because she can't sit on the sun. So since that's a Tanai that can never be upheld, we disregard it and we say he's only saying it to torment her. What do you want to ask?
How do you do the Tanai after the Maisa?
Well, the Tanai after the Maisa would be where you say you'll get the land on the Transjordan if you go and fight. So there you're doing the Maisa first. That's no good. You have to do the condition before the Maisa.
Or to say it, I mean.
Correct. Now, mute yourself, please. Now, so right away the Gemara says, the Mishnah says a stira to what it says. It says that Marshall could stipulate that he should be a Shemechina, but he shouldn't have to swear. But Amai, Masna Masha Kasabata. Amai, why? Masna Masha Kasabata. He's stipulating against what the Torah says. The Torah says that a Shemechina has to swear, but Kol Masna Masha Kasabata Tanai Batal. We should disregard his condition. So why do we say he could stipulate? Says the Gemara, how many Rabbi Yehuda? This is going according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar b'davar sheb'mamayin, by financial matters Tanai Kain. You can't stipulate against the Torah. The Tanya, ha'ima le'isha, if this fine, upstanding chassan says, Hariyat mekudeshesli, you should be betrothed to me. Almanasha ain't l'chalai she'ksus v'ina. He's a real fine fellow, and he says, I'm getting engaged to you on the condition that I don't have any obligation to give you food, clothing, or intimacy. Harizuma kudeshes, he's engaged, but v'tanai batal, we disregard his condition. You can't make a condition against the Torah. Divrei Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Davar sheb'mamayin t'nai kain. By something that's financial, you could make a stipulation. So in this case, he doesn't have to give her the food or the clothing, but he does have to give her marital intimacy. Says the Gemara, "Mi matzis mukma like Rabbi Yehuda." Can we say our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Yehuda? Aim a sefer. The sefer says a stock halacha. Kol hamasna mash kas b'Torah Tanai batal. Whoever stipulates against what it says in the Torah, the Tanai is batal. Also in the Rameir, that blanket statement goes according to Rameir. Says, no, it's going to Rabbi Yehuda. And when it says Tanai Batal, it's talking about non-financial matters. Sefer, b'davar she'ein shel mammon. Ema Sefer says, look at the Sefer. It says, Kol Tanai sheyesh by ma'aseh b'tchilasei. Any condition where he verbalizes the action first, Tanai Batal. Now that's Meir's opinion. Man shemat leidis le'asvara, who holds this Rameir. The Tanya Abba Chalafta ish kfar Chananya, Abba Chalafta, a man from the village of Chananya, Amar mishum Rameir, Tanoi kaidem l'maisa. If the condition is before the action, how is that Tanai? Maisa kaidem l'Tanai. If the action is before the condition, ain't it Tanai? That's Rameir's opinion. It's not Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Ella kula Rameir. But if it's Rameir, then how could Marshall stipulate that he wants to be a Shomer Chinim that doesn't swear? Says the Gemara, no, here Marshall is saying, look, I'll watch your car, but I'm not going to be a conventional Shomer. That's what he's saying. He's not saying I'm going to be a Shomer, but I want to go against the Torah. He says, I'll watch it, but I'm not going to be a conventional Shomer. I'll do you a favor. V'shani hachademei koreloi shabbat nafshe. He wasn't Mishawi. He says, look, take it or leave it. You want me to babysit your car, fine, but I'm not going to be a conventional shomer. He's not saying that he's going to be a shomer, but it should be different than the Torah. He's saying, I'm not going to be a conventional shomer. Tana, we learn in a Braisa. Now this is another thing. Umasna shomer sacha liyos kishoyel. That I could arrange with Marshall that I'm paying him to watch something, and he should have liability like a child. I'm giving him extra liability. That he should be chayiv even if it's an einus, like a child. So the Gemara says, b'mai, how does Marshall bind himself to that liability? B'dvarim? With words? Words are not enough to make him chayiv for such a liability. Amashmul b'shekanu miyadai. It's talking about where we made a kinyan sudar. In other words, I gave him a sudar, and so in this case, sudar is the kelev shel kaina, right? So I gave him the sudar, and he obligated himself to me to b'chayiv and einzin. Rabbi Yochanan says no. It's like I'm giving him a benefit that in lieu of this benefit he accepts even einzin. What's the benefit? That Rabbi Weiss trusted Marshall as the trustworthy guard in Chicago. That's good for his reputation. People will now send him hot dogs and stuff. Says the Gemara.
And bourbon.
Rabbi Yochanan Amar, afilu tema b'shaloi kana miyadai, b'ahi with that benefit, the nafik like kola, that a renown will go out. The inish mehemnu, that he's a trustworthy person, gomer mishabed nafshe, he's mishabed himself, even for einzin. The Mishnah stipulates that the only t'nai that we pay attention to is a t'nai that can be fulfilled. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. The Chacham say we pay attention to a t'nai even if it can't be fulfilled. The Chacham even if it can't be fulfilled, and you make it tonight to own kaim. So the Chacham hold that if he says, here's your get, unless you go up and sit on the sun, if she doesn't go up and sit on the sun, which she can't, the get is no good. So let's see first the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema. The Tanya, here's your get, that you fly to the heaven. Or you go down to the underground deep, which wasn't possible in those days. On the condition that you swallow a reed 200 feet long. On the condition that you cross the Mediterranean or the ocean by foot. So niskayim atnai, how is that get? If the t'nai is upheld, it's a get. Lo niskayim atnai ain't a get. If the t'nai is not upheld, it's not a get. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema says no, kizeh get. That's a get. Because if it can't be upheld, then he only said it to torment her. Whatever can't be fulfilled, and he made a stipulation, it's only like he's tormenting her kosher, and the get is kosher. Halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, and the Gemara says that that's clear from our anonymous Mishnah. We pass like an anonymous Mishnah. That's clearly the opinion of our Mishnah. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Masnisa Nami Deka. Only a condition that can be upheld at the end. And he made the Tanai initially before the Ma'isa Tanai Mashma. But if it's not possible to be upheld, we just disregard the Tanai. The Tanai is batal. Shmamina. Hadru Allah haseicher es apaylim. Hadru Allah haseicher es apaylim. Hadru Allah haseicher es apaylim. Every time we finish a parak in this very difficult Masechta is a great accomplishment. Please note, Rabbi Isai, that, let's see, there is in this Masechta 119 dafin, and we're going to daf 94, so we have less, Rabbi Isai, than 25 blot to the finishing of this world-class hard Masechta. So bravo to all of you, really. Really, bravo, everybody. Now, let me just tell you the halacha with a shayla. If, let's say, Yitz borrows my car, he's chayiv even for einzin. But if at the time, and here's the kicker, if at the time he borrows my car, he borrows my services as well. He asks me to drive him. Or he rents my services. And something happens to the car, even on Einis, Yitzis Potter, because that's called Balav Imai. The owner is with him. But if he borrows my car and then borrows my service later, or rents my service later, even though it's at the time that the Einis happens, he's chayiv. The only time he's potter is if I was in his employ or borrowed by him at the time that he borrowed the item. That's an interesting halacha that most people don't know. So let's see this inside. Hashoyel es hapara, if Marshall, if Yitz borrows my cow or my car, para is the name of a Chevy. Hashoyel es hapara, if he borrows my para Impala, v'shol baleha ima, and he borrows me at the same time to drive it. Or he hires me to drive him. Shal habalim, he borrowed oisachran, v'achakach shal esapara, and then he borrowed the cow, the car, umesa, and the cow or the car died, potter. Shenemar im bolav imay lo yishalom. If the owner was together, he doesn't have to pay. However, as the Mishnah continues, aval shal esapara, if he borrows the cow, the achakach, and then 2 days later, shal esabalim, he borrowed my help, oy sokran, oy hired me, umesa, even if I'm in his employ or with him at the time it dies, chayiv, because I wasn't in his employ at the time of the borrowing. Shenema bolav einimai, if the owner was not with him at the time of the borrowing, shalom yeshalom. Now, the Gemara says it implies that he has to borrow the cow and my services at the same time. That's impossible. Because he borrows me by asking me, and he borrows the cow by making Mashiach. So how could it be at the same time? Says the Gemara, Midiktani Sefer v'acha kach shal sapara, and afterwards he borrowed the cow. Michlal dereisha diktani ima mamish. It's at the same time. Ima mamish mimish kach. So how can he borrow me and the cow at the same time? Para b'mashikha. The cow is borrowed by pulling it. O balim b'amira, and I'm by speaking. So the Gemara says it's very possible. Iba yisema kigayin the kaima para b'chatzera d'shayel. The cow is in Yitzi's courtyard. So he doesn't have to pull it. He just has to say, could I use it? So he can say at the same time, could I use you and the cow? Dolei michzera mashicha. Iba yisema, where he says to me, the amalei at gufeich loy tishal, Rabbi Weiss, you shouldn't be borrowed to me until I finish pulling the cow. At shas mashicha as parasla. Now, Tanan awesome. And really, it's, I really commend everybody. It's already an hour and 3 minutes. It's 10 to 12. I shouldn't point it out to you. You're going to get sick. But it's 10 to 12. And look at this Olam. It's really, this is the way you finish Shas. This is the way you become Talmidei Chacham. When you grit through the hard hours, the hard times. It's not awesome. We learned over there, Arba Shaimim Heim. There are 4 categories of guardians. Shaimer Chinam, the unpaid watchman. Vashayel, the one who borrows. Naisei Sacha, the paid watchman. Vasaycha, and the renter. Shaimer Chinam, as we learned, the unpaid watchman Nishba lakol. He gets off the hook with everything. If it was stolen, if it was lost, if it was an arm abandoned, if it was fractured, if it died, he swears about all these things and he's potter. Vashoyel mishalem esakol. Yitzi borrows it, he's chayav for everything. The paid watchman and the renter, this is like the opinion of a mayor, nishboin ala shvurav ala shvuyav al mesa. He swears if it broke its foot, if it got captured by armed bandits, or if it died, and that he's potter because it's an aynus, or mishalman es aved v'esagneim, and he pays for loss and for theft. So the Gemara wants to know, how do we know all these rules? Minani mili. The Tan Rabbanan taught the three parshiyos of Shaimin. So the Tan Rabbanan parsha Rishayna Nemru b'Shayna Chinam. The first parsha that says Yepata b'Gneva v'Aveda, that's a Shayna Chinam. Shniya, the second parsha that says Yechai b'Gneva v'Aveda, that's a Shayna Sacher. Shlishis, the third one that says Yechayiv, even for Einzin, that's a Shayl. So the Gemara says, well, the third one that is Shayl, that says Beferish. Bishlam is Shlishis b'Shayl Mefurish. It says that outright. V'chi yishal ish me'im re'eyu. If Yitzi borrows from me, v'nishbar or mace, and the item breaks or dies, bolavein imay, and I'm not in his employ, shalom yishalom. So that's obviously a Shayl. The first one that says it's part of B'Gneva V'Aveda, that's a Shem Echinam, and the second one that says it's Chayiv, it's a Shem Esacher, Eipachana. We should switch it. Maybe switch it. It doesn't say. So obviously the Gemara says, what do you mean? It's obvious who should be Chayiv in the Gneva V'Aveda, the paid watchman. Who should be part of Gneva V'Aveda, the free one. Mistavra Shniya B'Shem Esacher, Shekain Chayiv B'Gneva V'Aveda. So now the Gemara says, well, not so fast. In the first parsha, it says that if Irving claims that it was stolen, and then we find out that he was lying, he has to pay kefil. Now that's not true in the second parsha, because in the second parsha, Irving says it's stolen, he's chayiv for its stolen, so he never has to pay kefil. So says the Gemara, maybe the first parsha is the Shem Esacher because there's a case of kefil there. Says the Gemara, Adarabba, maybe Rishonim b'Shem Esacher shekein misham tashlumei kefil b'toyon taneskanev. Right? If the Shem Echinim claims that it was stolen, and then we find out it wasn't stolen, they has to pay kefil. So the Gemara says, yeah, but it's more mistavra that to be mechayiv you with the claim of you're stolen, that you have to pay the principal, and you don't get off the hook, that's more of a liability than the case where Irving might be lying. The case where Irving is lying is not a normal case. So in a normal case, if you say it's stolen, one is pater and one is chayiv, it's mistaver that the Shem Echinam is pater and the Shem Esacher is chayiv, even though the Shem Echinam being pater could lead to a case of stringency, that if Irving says that it was stolen, we find out he was lying, then he has to pay kefil. Says in Gemara, afilu hachi karna b'lo shvua, the one who has to pay the principal without swearing, we say, listen, if it's stolen, you're a chayiv. Adifa mikfela b'shvua, it's more than the possible consequence that if you're lying, you'll have to pay kefil. Teda, you should know, da shoyel kol anashalai. When Yitz borrows something from me, all the benefit is his. Unlike a paid watchman is getting paid. A shoyel, he got all the benefit. He's getting it for free. The shoyel kol anashalai, and he doesn't pay kefil. He pays the keren, right? If he says it's stolen, he pays the keren. Ve'enu mishalem ela keren. So now the Gemara starts getting technical with us. Yitzi borrows my animal, all the benefit is his. He has to feed the animal. V'ashoyel kol anashalai v'aboy mezayne, says Gemara, no, the kaima ba'agam. I give it to him, I lend it to him in a public swamp, where the food is free. Says the Gemara, Bava Netira, he has to watch it. Says the Gemara, Manatamas, it's talking about where the swamp has its own, it's a municipal area that has its own guards. It doesn't mean all the hanos is. It's mostly it's a free ride. I'm giving it to him. I'm not charging him for it. He's not a renter. I'm not paying him anything. It's mostly a free ride.
The shoal is called a shomer. So you see, it's called a shomer. He wouldn't call it a shomer.
What are you asking?
No, I'm just saying that he's called a shomer in the Gemara. So obviously he's a shomer. There's some shmira there.
It doesn't have to be. That's what the Gemara is saying. It doesn't have to be. It could be, but it doesn't have to be because it could be another mas.
Okay.
The Iba Yisema, B'Shelas Kalim, where he borrows from me a guitar. So a guitar, he doesn't have to feed, and it's protected in the house with all of his musical equipment. So this taka, it's kol hanoshalai. Now, noisei sacher va'aseicher, the paid watchman and the renter nishboin ala shvuya v'ala mesa. They swear in the case where it fractures, it's captured by an armed bandit, or if it dies, and they have to pay in the event that it's lost or it's stolen. Now the problem is that the Torah doesn't say anywhere where it's lost. So Bishloim Geneva Dixiv Im Ganav Yuganev. The pasuk says Im Ganav Yuganev. So it says if it's stolen. Im Ganav Yuganev Meimai Yishalom Labanav. El Aveda Minolan. But how do we know if it was lost? The Tanya Im Ganav Yuganev Ainli El Geneva Aveda Minayin. From the double lashon. Talmud Leimer Im Ganav Yuganev Mikam Akim. It could have just said Im Ganav. Why does it say Im Ganav Yuganev? So that includes even if it's lost. That's good if you don't hold that the Torah speaks in the vernacular. People speak in the vernacular and people, repeat themselves for emphasis. So then it's not a drasha. Well, if you're chayiv for Geneva, you're surely mechayiv for Aveda. Because Aveda is more of a negligence than Geneva. Kalvachaymer, Oma Geneva shekroiva la'oinus. Madach if it's stolen, which is closer to an oinus. Mishalem, Aveda, which is closer to negligence. Shekroiva l'pshia like kol shechem. Ve'idach. And the one that says we learn it out from Im Ganav Yuganev, why don't you learn it out from the Kalvachaymer? Says, well, Milsa Dasi Kalvachaymer is sometimes something that we learn out from a Kalvachaymer. Sometimes the pasuk says it, even though we could have learned it from one of the Yid Gimel Midas Shator and Nidreshes by him. Now, the Gemara asks, Vashoyel Mishalem Esakol. The one who borrows it pays for everything. So Bishlai Meshvura Omesa, where it's fractured or it dies, if you borrow something, the nishbar it breaks a mace, you chayiv. Ela shvuya b'shayil minala. But how do we know if it was captured by armed bandits? V'chi tema neilef mishvura mesa. And if you'll say, you know what? This begins a new sugya. So we'll stop with this question here, where the Gemara wants to know. The pasuk says that a shayil is chayiv, where it's fractured and it dies. How do we know he's also chayiv if it was taken by an armed bandit? And now Rabbi say, don't go anywhere because we're going to learn the Mishnah Yomis. Let's just put this in the books over here.
What time tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night, 10 to 9.